Imagine you stand at the Mashki gate of Nineveh in 612 BC, and the winter mud sucks at your sandals like a hungry mouth. You see the river mist cling to the stones. You feel your spear shaft slick with rain and sweat. A shadow moves beyond the wall, too large to be a man, therefore your stomach tightens before your mind understands. You smell siege smoke before you see the siege line, pitch, wet wood, and the sharp stink of crowded men who do not wash because water is fearfully counted. You hear temple bells behind you, thin and stubborn, because priests refuse to let the new year blessing die. Fresh reeds lie on a cold altar. Bright cloth hangs like a lie against the gray sky. You see smiles that do not reach eyes. But the normal world is already broken. A runner staggers in, face raw from wind. His words tangle. One breath says Babylonians. Another breath says Medes. Someone else whispers about steppe riders, ghosts on horses, therefore the threat feels less like a blade and more like weather. You don't know if the enemy arrives as an army or as a storm that never stops. You climb the wall and look down. You see their camps pulse with torches like a second, hostile city pressing its face against yours. Drums start, stop, start again, testing your heartbeat like a lock being picked. A commander speaks near your ear, voice firm. Therefore the men around him pretend firmness is contagious. Reinforcements are on the way, but his eyes do not match his words. You feel the first true clue. This empire knows how to hunt. It does not know how to be hunted. A stone from an enemy engine slams into the outer works with a sound that steals air from every throat. Not random. Measured. A message in physics. They can reach you. Dust puffs from the impact, and it tastes like old brick and older pride. Someone laughs too loudly, therefore someone else makes the sign against evil. You grip your spear harder because the wall no longer feels like a wall. It feels like skin. Imagine the days that follow as a siege clock that never stops ticking. The sun rises, but it brings no fresh start. The sun sets, but it brings no rest. You live inside one long hour measured by hunger, repairs, and terror. You see men sleep sitting up with helmets on, because lying down feels like surrender. You feel your shoulders knot into permanent pain from carrying shield and bow, therefore even peace would hurt now. Grain is rationed. You chew barley that tastes like dust and mice. The grit grinds between teeth until teeth feel borrowed. A child cries for bread, therefore the mother hushes the child too hard. You hear arguments bloom like infections, soldiers first, because walls, children first, because gods, priests first, because rituals hold the sky up. But every argument ends in the same silence when the bowl is empty. The city turns inward, teeth bared. Night duty comes. You stand on the parapet with a bow that feels heavier each hour. Your fingers split at the creases, therefore the string bites into fresh skin and leaves a wet sting. Smoke crawls into your throat and lives there. Below, you see enemy engineers move in the dark like ants around a carcass. Their lanterns wink, then vanish. You hear scraping, wood on stone, rope on wood, and you cannot tell if they build a ramp, a tower, or a lie meant to keep you awake. You don't know where the next blow lands. That not knowing becomes its own weapon. Inside the city, a neighbor approaches, eyes glassy with calculation. You see her hands tremble as she offers a bracelet, New Year jewelry, bright and cheap, but bright enough to pretend tomorrow exists. She begs you to trade it for a handful of flour. You feel the moment stretch, therefore shame becomes physical, like a weight on the tongue. You cannot meet her eyes because your mind counts. How many days does flour buy before the walls fail? You hear yourself say something like no without a voice, and the bracelet's bright color suddenly looks obscene against the mud. Rumors sprint faster than messengers because feet are tired, but mouths never tire. You hear, the king is dead. But you also hear, the king eats in the palace even now. Therefore you also hear, the king flees through a hidden gate. Each version changes how tightly men hold spears. Each version changes how loudly women pray. Therefore each version becomes true for someone somewhere, even if the facts never touch it. You don't know what to believe, and belief becomes a ration too. A horn blasts, a short call, therefore a sortie forms like a reflex. The gate grinds open. Cold air rushes in smelling of wet earth and enemy sweat. You run out into mud that grabs at ankles, therefore each step feels like a hand trying to pull you down. Your heart climbs into your throat, and your mouth tastes like copper before any blade touches you. You slam into an enemy line that does not break. Faces stare from behind shields, hard, tired, certain. You strike, but the impact travels back through your arms into your bones. Someone falls beside you, therefore the space opens like a missing tooth. You retreat with less air in your lungs and fewer men at your back. The gate shuts again, and the city feels smaller. Priests claim a sign in the clouds. Soldiers claim a sign in the rats leaving the granaries. You see rats moving in a stream, their bodies slick and urgent, therefore your spine prickles because animals flee what they smell coming. But the priests raise hands and insist the gods test faith. You don't know which is worse, bad omens or accurate ones. The rain intensifies. It no longer falls, it presses. It turns streets to slurry. It makes torches cough and sputter. You feel water seep into boots, therefore toes go numb until numbness feels merciful. The river level rises. At first it seems like ordinary winter swelling, but then you see the current gnaw at the base of the defenses like teeth. You touch the wall stones, and they feel colder than the air. You feel it in the stones. The wall is drinking water. The city's great confidence, those tall faces of brick, begins to sound different. A low groan lives under the wind. Men pretend not to hear it, but you hear it anyway. Therefore sleep becomes impossible, because even silence now sounds like something building. Imagine the decisive minute arriving like a door kicked inward. It does not begin with a heroic shout. It begins with a vibration in your bones. You stand near the threatened section, spear in hand, rain running down your neck in icy lines. You see mudbrick darken, swell, soften. You smell wet clay, the smell of a jar left too long in water. You hear a crack race through the wall. It is like splitting timber, but deeper, older. The wall's face bulges outward. Men shout warnings that arrive too late. The breach opens with a sound like the city's jaw breaking. Brown floodwater surges through the weakened section, blasting into the ditch. Chunks of brick the size of shields tumble and spin. You see men knocked off their feet as if struck by invisible fists. They vanish into the boiling water, therefore their screams shorten into bubbles. You taste river mud in the air, gritty and alive. The wall, your certainty, becomes a mouth spewing its own body out. Enemy horns answer instantly. They are waiting for the wall to fail, therefore the failure feels planned by someone else's patience. You realize the worst kind of intelligence is the kind your enemy already uses. Torches appear through rain like angry eyes. Shapes move toward the gap with a speed that feels inhuman because it is coordinated. You don't know if reinforcements arrive for you or for them. You run. Mud grabs your calves. Your shield bangs your knee with every step, therefore pain becomes rhythm. Arrows hiss overhead, some yours, some theirs, and you cannot tell which sound means death because they sound the same. A shaft slaps into wet ground near your foot, vibrating like a trapped insect. You smell damp feathers and fresh-cut wood. You duck without thinking because thought is too slow. At the breach, you see them clearly for the first time. Medes in heavy gear, shoulders hunched, moving like a battering ram. Babylonians with grim discipline, shields aligned, eyes forward, therefore their calm feels more frightening than rage. Torches spit flame into the rain. Fire and water share the same breath. You hear shouted orders in languages that scrape the ear, therefore your own language suddenly feels small. The invaders pour through the city's wound. Street fighting begins as a chaos of corners. Smoke mixes with rain, making a bitter fog. You stab at a shape in the gray. Your spear catches cloth, then meat. You feel the shock in your arms, solid, final. Therefore nausea rises because the body resists being opened. The shape falls, and you do not know if you kill an invader or a neighbor wearing scavenged armor. That not knowing follows the spear like a stain. Someone swings a blade near your face. You hear it cut air. You smell the sweat of the attacker, sour, human, therefore the enemy becomes terrifyingly real. You slam your shield up. The impact numbs your forearm. You shove forward and stumble over something soft. You look down and see hair matted with mud. A hand twitches, then stills. The street becomes a map of bodies you do not have time to read. Outer districts ignite. Roof beams pop. Oil stores roar. The air turns into sandpaper. You breathe and feel your throat scrape raw. Your eyes stream until sight becomes a smear. Therefore you defend a blur. Therefore you strike at silhouettes. Therefore you shout warnings that nobody hears because the city screams louder. You hear the sound of pottery exploding in heat. You hear animals, goats, dogs, crying as if they speak. You retreat toward inner streets because holding the breach feels like holding back the river with bare hands. The palace quarter glows like a kiln, a steady orange that does not flicker like normal fire. You smell burning cedar, therefore the scent of luxury becomes the scent of death. You pass a courtyard where a family huddles around a jar of water as if it is a god. Their faces shine with soot and tears. They look at you like you're an answer. But you carry only a spear and fear. You turn a corner and hear a sound that changes the world. It is not just wood burning. It is knowledge burning. The library burns. Clay tablets crack in heat like stones screaming. You see shelves collapsing in bursts of sparks. You smell hot dust and old ink. A scribe appears, hair singed, arms full of tablets, eyes wild. He shouts words that do not land as sentences, only as pleading. Names of kings. Records. Contracts. Prayers. The city's memory. But the roof groans above him, therefore time runs out. You step closer and feel heat slap your face like a hand. Your skin tightens. Your eyelashes curl. You reach for a stack of tablets. They are heavier than expected, cold at first, because clay holds its own stubbornness. But then the heat reaches them. A tablet cracks in your grip with a sharp snap, therefore the break feels like bone. You drop it. The sound it makes on stone is small compared to the roar, therefore the loss feels obscene, history reduced to a clatter. The scribe screams again, but smoke swallows his words. You stagger back into the street and see the palace glow brighter. You hear a distant roar like a beast. It is the sound of stored things, oil, wood, textiles, turning into one hunger. You taste ash on your tongue. It coats the mouth, therefore every swallow feels like eating sand. Somewhere, priests chant louder than the fire, therefore the chant sounds like defiance and panic tied together. A child grabs your wrist. Small fingers, surprisingly strong because fear lends strength. The child pulls toward an alley that leads to the river. In the opposite direction, a captain shouts for a line at the temple steps. You see his face, streaked with soot, eyes bright with command. Loyalty pulls one way. Survival pulls another. You feel that one heartbeat contains an entire life. But the air itself seems to choose for you, because breathing near the temple means breathing smoke and arrows. Therefore, the alley becomes more than escape. It becomes air. You choose in one heartbeat, loyalty to a command or loyalty to life. You run with the child. The alley is narrow, walls sweating with rain and soot. You hear footsteps behind, pursuit, or other fleeing feet, you cannot tell. The ground is slick, therefore you nearly fall and catch yourself on a wall that burns your palm because the stone holds heat. The child coughs hard, a wet, tearing sound. You pull the child closer, because losing that small weight feels like losing the last proof that tomorrow matters. The river appears ahead, swollen and fast, carrying debris, broken beams, baskets, a dead animal spinning like a dark leaf. You see people crowding, trying to push onto anything that floats. You hear pleading, shouting, curses, prayers. Therefore the river becomes another battlefield, only this one kills without choosing sides. You look back and see Nineveh's skyline, towers, roofs blur behind smoke. The great city looks like a torch held under a low sky. Someone shoves. You stumble. Your hand grips a rope tied to a small boat. The rope is rough and wet, therefore it bites into skin. You feel the boat buck and tug against the current like a frightened animal. You do not know if it holds together. You do not know if an arrow finds your back. You do not know if the enemy already controls the bank. But staying means fire, therefore risk becomes the only door left. You push off, half falling into the boat with the child. Water slaps the hull. Cold sprays your face. The boat swings out, and the city's noise dulls by a fraction, as if distance politely lowers the volume of horror. Dawn after the fire does not feel like morning. It feels like the world forgetting how to breathe. The smoke thins enough to reveal shapes. You stand, if standing still exists now, on a muddy bank among other survivors. You see ash coating every surface, turning skin gray and hair white. It coats your tongue, therefore speech tastes like funeral. The famous walls, those proud inscriptions, are blackened, broken, wet, as if even the bricks feel ashamed. Bodies lie where they fall. Not arranged. Not honored. Just abandoned evidence. You see a hand sticking out of mud, fingers curled as if still gripping a weapon that is not there. You see a helmet filled with rainwater, reflecting a piece of sky like a cruel mirror. You hear flies already gathering, a thin, persistent buzzing that does not care about empires. Therefore, death feels less dramatic and more like paperwork the world processes without emotion. You look for a banner to follow and find only smoke. This is the verdict. The superpower that once decides everyone else's fate cannot even decide what happens to its own dead. You feel the absence of order like a missing tooth in the jaw of reality. Streets that once carried tribute now carry refugees. Gates that once welcomed captives now gape like broken mouths. You stand among people whose eyes keep flicking upward because even after the battle the mind waits for the next, another stone, another horn. But the strangest truth lands with the weight of inevitability. No clean successor steps into place today. Babylon rises, yes. The Medes claim their share. But the old machine, the system of terror, tribute, and control, does not simply change hands. It shatters. You feel it in small things. No official voice tells you where to go. No ration is issued. No patrol keeps thieves away. Therefore, borders become questions again. Roads become dangerous again. Merchants hesitate because coin is useless if a bridge is held by strangers. Refugees move like shadows between new flags, therefore rumor becomes the only currency that never runs out. You hear people argue over which army owns which village now. Nobody knows. Therefore, everyone fears everyone. You came to Nineveh expecting a familiar pattern. One power falls, another power sits in the same chair. But you live something colder. You live collapse that creates a vacuum, conflicting claims, unstable alliances, sudden scarcity, and people clinging to rumors because rumor is the only thing that arrives on time. You feel the vacuum like wind in a broken house. It whistles through gaps where certainty used to be. Therefore, the lesson cuts deeper than a battlefield. When systems burn, security, supply, law, the fire does not stop at the border of the old capital. It spreads into uncertainty. You see that spread in every hungry face that looks for a grain store that no longer exists. You hear it in every argument about who has the right to guard a road. You feel it in every night spent listening for footsteps because nobody agrees who is friend. Uncertainty becomes the ground beneath the next century. The verdict is counted in the bodies that lie unclaimed, in the tablets that crack and turn to dust, in the children whose names vanish because the scribes do not live long enough to write them. You see the cost in the ash that settles into the river and rides downstream, therefore even distant fields taste faintly of Nineveh's end. The mirror is unavoidable. Do you see the same pattern today? Systems assumed permanent until one pressure, then another, then a final crack makes the whole structure fail at once? Therefore the legacy question waits, ungoogleable and personal. When the wall begins to drink water and everyone swears reinforcements are on the way, do you spend the last strength defending the steps, or guiding one trembling life through the alley toward air?